Hello, everybody. This is Jeanne-Marie Penel here in San Diego for the Montessori show. Hello, Simone. Before we do an intro, I do want to do a land acknowledgement of where I am here in California. So I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Kumeyaay people and pay my respect to elders both past and present. So welcome, everybody. Please let us know where you're joining in from. It would be wonderful to know because we have such an international community.
Hello, everyone.
Rio de Janeiro, wow. Amsterdam, Seattle, Greece, wonderful. So hello, Simone, how are you?
Yes, very well. Lovely to be here with you all. I see some old faces from when we were doing the Montessori show. We've been doing this for like 6 years. So we're always excited to see you all. And today's obviously a very hot topic. We're going to be talking about Montessori and screens. And I was saying to Jean-Marie just before the call, if you had 10 Montessori teachers in this room, we'd all have slightly different approaches. And Dr. Montessori herself couldn't write the book about Montessori and screens because they didn't exist in her time. What we're pulling on today is the information that Jean-Marie and I know about the child, and the child has not changed, have they? They still have the same human tendencies and needs. Also based on our training and the training that we had and their opinions now on screens, we'll be passing that on to you, as well as, the little bit that Dr. Montessori wrote about technology in general being a tool and that we have to be careful of it. So I think that's a good place to start. So Jean-Marie, how are you feeling?
I am feeling great, and I see some familiar faces there. Hello, Erica, in the Italian Alps. I know that. I am doing great, and I was telling Simone before we started, I was just in Italy a little bit over a month ago, 2 months ago, and I had the immense privilege to visit Dr. Montessori's home, place of birth, as well as to go to the first Casa de Bambini. So that was the highlight of my trip recently, and wonderful to do this little pilgrimage. So just wanted to share that. How are you, Simone?
Amazing. That must have been amazing. I'm really well. I'm happy doing my parent-child classes here in Amsterdam. It's accelerating towards the end of the year, and just always my heart's full when I get to sit in a Zoom room with our Montessori community. It just reminds us that even though we're all spread out around the world, we can connect in this way. So excited about that. I think it's time to get stuck in because we've got a lot of questions that have come in before.
A lot of questions came in. This is definitely a hot topic.
Well, the best way to do it would be to have a short introduction about some of the principles, and then we'll take questions from you live here. You can unmute yourselves and ask your questions, but we'll also alternate them with the people who can't be here live. So we'll ask one live, and then we'll go to one from the Instagram or the Google sheet where people sent in their questions before. Okay, so I said to Jean-Marie that I'd just start by a short introduction. Basically kind of like how Montessori teachers approach Montessori in their classrooms in general. I'm sure there's some Montessori classrooms that do it slightly differently, but in general, for example, I have a toddler environment and I have no screens in my environment. And the reason I would have no screens in my environment is they're sensorial learners. They need hands-on experiences to understand the world around them. And the interaction with the screen is an abstract concept, right? And so it's easier for them to understand the world about them when they can touch it, feel it, smell it, and use all of their senses, the sensorial learner. A screen is visual. There's lots of moving pictures. It can be very overstimulating for these young children, and they don't need it. What are their needs? They need to communicate, they need to move, they need to explore their world, and those things are done best in real life. And then you move to the 3 to 6 classroom. And there may be some Montessori classrooms who use a tablet, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I hope there's no, because John, when you talked about the 3 to 6 child for a moment in that classroom.
Right. So the 3 to 6 is still, in the absorbent mind. They're still extremely sensorial learners. There is absolutely no need for screens in a primary classroom. I think maybe the first time that we might be starting to introduce screens would be in the lower elementary, so the 6 to 9. And personally, I would even wait longer. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are some Montessori environments, and you know, like Simone said at the beginning, we would have 10 teachers, they would have 10 different opinions, but I have never seen screens in the lower grades, so under 6.
So then in the 6 to 12 classrooms, in my assistance training for elementary age group, Alison Oars, she actually has written a paper on it. Actually, I'll drop in the chat the link to her paper. It's called On Building Development, and a couple of the other resources that I will pull from. It's called On Building Character, the Elementary Child's Moral Development in the Digital Age by Alison Oars, and what she talked about in our training. And she talked about using technology as an active tool, so rather than as a passive thing. So there's different ways of using technology. And so, for example, you can have a kid watching YouTube, right? That's the most passive way to use it. Or you could use YouTube to look up a clip to find out how to build something. Or you could make a clip about building something yourself, right? And so what they're saying is, like, use technology to be active. So when the child wants to present their information, they could use technology as a way to present it. But it doesn't have to be, rather than even Googling the answer to all these things or asking Alexa, the Montessori child, particularly the elementary child, has to go out into the world. And so it's better to like make a phone call, to go out into your community and visit a bakery rather than watch a YouTube clip on how to bake bread. Why don't you go and ask the baker how you make it, or visit a friend, or, you know, look at your community. And this is actually, a child is very social at this age. They need connections with real life things, so not just passively taking in the information. And so the child might get interested in coding, and then it's going to be an active participation. They're actively trying to code. And it will be with limited, we always make agreements in our elementary class about rules. You know, we don't say this is the rule and give it to them and an elementary age child, a 6 to 12-year-old. So we would do the same with screens. Is like, we, in our family, we believe that screens should be used as a tool. And this is how, you know, what kind of time limits do we find appropriate? How are we going to manage that so that I'm not nagging you to turn off the screens? And coming to the agreements with the family and try them out. And then after a week, see what's working, what's not working. Okay, I noticed that you were really finding it hard to turn it off after we'd agreed. How are we going to make this transition more easy? And those kind of things as well. And then as you move then into adolescence, adolescence is a time when they prepare to be an adult. And so you can then think of technology as a way that they sometimes communicate with their friends, but so that it doesn't impact on their schoolwork, so that it doesn't impact on your family time or if visitors are over. So again, you're making agreements, but also they have to start to use technology and manage like the interruptions that come with technology and still getting their homework done and everything like that. So it's a bit messy, but then maybe that will be the time that technology is more allowed maybe in your home, but still within safe limits, and talking a lot about safety, digital safety. You know, even this can happen in the 6 to 9 and 6 to 12 age, because if they put in a really innocent search like cat whiskers, it might turn up to be the name of something that you don't want them to see. And, you know, so you have to maybe have saved on your bookmarks. These are safe pages, you know, like Wikipedia is where we go. You know, and you have the bookmarks for the resources that you find most appropriate. And they often would do that in a 6 to 12 classroom. You might have the ability to look something up and there'd be bookmarks so that their children can easily navigate to those. But actually the computers, like in my children's Montessori school, they had 2 computers between 30 children, and they had a schedule that they could write their name on when they wanted to use it. And then they were always using it to prepare presentations mostly, and occasionally for some research. But again, as I was saying, the research we like to mostly do is send them to the library, you know, to actually go out and find those answers. So before we get into your questions, one big thing that we always talk about in Montessori is us as the adults, how we use, how we model, you know, the use of our screens. So we have phones. I have mine right next to me, you know, so how are we going to manage this thing? If they see us on our phones all the time, they're going to want to play with it, because they just as we like, they like cleaning the house because they see us cleaning, and all the other things that they like doing because we do them, they also get very interested in these digital devices. So with very young children, it's so important to have a special place where you put them, not on, like, people say, well, how can I stop them using the iPad? You don't have the iPad out on your like low surfaces. Put it away, and you know, you can have it out of sight. Put your phone out of sight, and then if you pick it up because you want to check a timetable, you know, for a train, you can say, oh, I'm just checking the train timetable now, as opposed to sitting and scrolling. Or I'm just going to have an Instagram break, is what I say with my older children. And then I actually thought it was really lovely when I heard them say that back. Oh, I'm just going to take an Instagram break. And they really just used it as a break. And then they, you know, got used to where our model is so important about how we use technology. And so just be conscious of that as we go into this conversation. Anything else, Jean-Marie, that I missed?
No, I think you hit it right on the ball. The idea of modeling. I mean, I think it really starts with us, right? Our young children want what is in our hands that is fascinating us, that we are, you know, our attention is there. So I think it really starts, especially for the younger children, and to really be at peace as to why you're wanting to model certain things, and just having new habits, right, about the phone when you have a young child around. So, and we can talk more about that as we answer the questions.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to upgrade.
Oh,
we're at 96.
Okay, we'll take some more space for people who are joining the call, but I'll just read out Akshatha's comment. Some argue video games to be an active interaction, but it seems to have so many bad effects on the child. So I guess even with active engagement, we need to be mindful about how it affects the child. Yes, absolutely. Think about, like, for example, making stop motion films can be an active way. Like, my children love making stop motion film, when you make Play-Doh and you shape the Play-Doh and you take a photo and then you make a change and then you take another photo. And there's a whole lot of sequencing and things like that. Or they might like to edit their own films and those kind of things. So always, yes, use, like, if they're going to play a video game, what would be the most, I did eventually let my children play a game called Roller Coaster Tycoon and Zoo Tycoon. And this was them designing their own zoo. And they had to know what kind of habitats each of the animals wanted to have. And they had to even place toilets so that the visitors could use the facilities. And so it's also being very mindful of them. If you do expose your child to screens, be it a TV show or an app or a video game, then what values are they being exposed to, and how important are they? Even things like the screen rate of, you know, how quickly the images change, like choose slow images. Yeah.
And one thing we were talking about offline with Simone before you all joined us is also the fact that both Simone and I have young adults, children. So I think the whole, you know, conundrum that a lot of parents today with young children find themselves in, we did not experience. Like, my first smartphone was when my daughter went to high school. So this was for a 16-year-old, and that was the first time. So I didn't even have a phone, you know, before that. So there wasn't this conflict. Sure, there was the conflict of the screen as a television, but and for me personally, I chose not to have a television in my home until they were 10 years old, which was really hard for my husband, but he survived, all is good. But yeah, so the parents that are here that have young children are in a whole different situation than Simone and I were as parents of young children. So just wanted to put that out there as well, because we can have compassion and empathy, but we didn't actually live it.
And we can also say that we do know how to entertain children without devices. You know, that we used to go to the cafe and we couldn't put a mobile phone in our children's hands. So we packed things like a little book and
Exactly.
And then when we were getting restless, we'd get up and we'd go and look in the kitchen. So we also sometimes take the easy option to turn on a screen, when Montessori way is about involving them in our daily life. So when we're cooking, they can be invited in to help us cook, or they could bring in something to play in the kitchen as well. But actually, I did see that come in as a question, so maybe we can hold that till a little bit later. Okay, so Jean-Marie, I'm going to read you out the first question, which is using screen time and YouTube to introduce things. Oh, so they're using screen time and YouTube to introduce things to a 2-year-old. For example, babies swimming before her lesson, and aeroplanes and a pilot before their first flight. But lately, they've been asking for more and more screens and pushing the boundaries. So how to deal with the after effects, like a major tantrum, for example, because that's true, isn't it? Is that sometimes we're going to have to set a limit and our children aren't going to be happy about it. So what would you suggest?
So for one, I would suggest that for a 2-year-old, we just avoid the screen altogether so that we can talk about the, we're going swimming, we can get some books that show children swimming and so forth. But if for those who aren't there yet, who haven't shown the screen, try to avoid it altogether. Brainstorm on other ways, go actually to the pool and look at it. Take a trip to the airport and go explore, get a book, things like that, right? Now, if there is the whole, tantrum afterwards because they're pushing, that is, for me, a big piece of information for you as observation that they're too young to manage and to self-regulate. We have to remember that screens are a form of addiction. So it does to the brain what crack and heroin will do. So it is a form of addiction. So let's not even tempt that addictive brain with it, right? And so when they do have a tantrum, I think we just go back to the tools that we've, shared over and over again, which is really having compassion and empathy for the child who is having a hard time, letting go of that screen time, and just, letting them know you were really enjoying that. And, I know it's wonderful. And right now it's time to do something else. Let's go outside. Try to break it. Going outside to me is always the best. Going outside, taking a bath, doing something that is going to calm us will definitely help. But, as I said, if you can avoid, going there, because I think honestly today we are so, it is such kind of a, the thing that we do. Like if we want to know something, like Simone said, we're not going to call up our friend who's a specialist in certain thing. We're going to Google it. We're going to, ask Siri. So we have to be that model of, oh, let's go to the library and find some books on airplanes and traveling, right? Or swimming or things like that. So think outside the box. Don't revert to your phone.
And I think what you said is really true. It's just like, even with older children who may have access to screens, and even if they're doing an active project, they might not want to wrap up because it's dinner time and they're going to have hard times. And so it's the same as with any other topic. For some reason, screens seem to be something that gets more activated, but it can be the same as just as if we were leaving the playground or throwing food at the table. We can just be kind and clear. Yeah, you really wanted to do more, and we'd agreed that it's time to stop, And I think coming to agreements with older children, for example, about setting limits can be great, because you're like, oh, this is the agreement. And they might complain, no. And you're like, we made agreement. And they'll be like, yeah, okay. They're not happy about it. But if we're consistent and we follow through and we're predictable, then, they made the agreement with us. It's a group agreement. Then that makes it such a difference. 3 to 6 year olds are difficult to make agreements sometimes with the 3-year-old, for example, at that end. So then it might be more the adults setting the agreement, and then gradually you can make the agreement together and reviews it. Also, I loved Essen's idea to print pictures from online if there are no books about that subject, because, we can't buy books about every little thing. But I think that you could make your own kind of book, which would be really fun.
Exactly. Yeah, no, and it's what I mean about thinking outside the box, like even draw, make stories, whatever. But it's like, to me, it's kind of, the lazy way, even for myself. Like, I will admit it, I will talk into my phone and ask questions instead of, maybe researching it a bit differently. So I think it's just us retraining ourselves, because this is new, right? This is a whole new generation of how to parent with these digital contraptions that we have.
I mean, I think just keep going back to the human tendencies, and is this going to help my child explore, the world around them? And is it giving them hands-on learning? Is it giving them the communication skills? Is it giving them the social skills that they need? All of those kind of things. So that's the child that Dr. Montessori worked with, and that child has not changed. And we're living in a world with technology, so we're not ignoring it, but we're just saying, do they need to look up this right now, or can we find other ways? And sometimes maybe there is no other option because you live in a remote country community and there's no other option, but just I think Jean-Marie came up with some good ideas as alternatives as well. And Akshatha and Nayanga talk about using timers for transitions, and that works great with a 3-year-old, giving them a heads up 5 more minutes than 2 minutes, same kind of thing as leaving the playground. Yeah, so did anyone on the call want to put up their hand and unmute themselves to ask a question as the next?
You can either raise your hands down below. I think, no, there is no raise hands, but just maybe ask us if you do want to put on your camera. Oh, okay. So ask to unmute. Essen, I've asked you to unmute.
Oh,
there you go.
We've
Perfect.
got Ingrid as well. 1 second. I did Ingrid first. 1 sec.
Oh.
Essen, waiting?
I don't mind waiting. I'll put myself back on you.
Let's do Ingrid first. Sorry, Jean-Marie. Ingrid, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, I want to introduce screens to my children when they are approximately 6 years old or something, as I know how addictive they are. And my partner and I watch TV at night, for example, because we like it. But what about if my child that is 3 asks why he can't watch TV, right? Because he's always there, but it's off when he's awake. So what can I say to them in a, nice way, that's my question.
So Ingrid, from what I'm hearing, you have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and you're watching television with the 6-year-old?
Yeah, so in the case that I would be watching TV with my 6-year-old or something, but it's not time for the 3-year-old to watch TV yet, what can I do? What strategies could I have to deal with that? Because of course the 3-year-old is going to be jealous and is going to want to join, but for me wouldn't be ready yet to do that.
So I would really try to time it as much as possible when the 3-year-old is away, asleep, doing something else, would be the ideal. And otherwise it would be, maybe with a 3-year-old is maybe once in a while sitting down with him or her for just 10 minutes, but together, right? Together. It's about that communication to be able to have that interaction. But, as much as possible, if you can let the 6-year-old watch television with you. And that's another big point of screens and televisions and such, is it's really, you never really want to just set your child up and be in front of a screen by themselves at that young of an age, right? So you need to kind of make an effort to be there with them, to interact, so that we can talk about what we're seeing. We can talk about the feelings that are coming up and such, so that it is an interactive discourse, because, the other day I actually wrote a blog yesterday because I was kind of upset about some of the things that I see sometimes online, and you have these, influencers that have huge followings and they have young children and they're doing things and people think that it's okay. Right. And so I wrote a letter from the baby's perspective, and one of them was that I saw a mother who was very proud to be saying how she could get things done because she put her toddlers in a high chair in front of the television with food. And to me, it was like, please, what are you doing? But, it's like, how do I say that without, sounding like this old witch. So I wrote a letter from the baby's perspective. And that is, again, is, this notion that first of all, eating food is a way we're communicating. So we should hopefully be sitting down with our children and eating. And that, just putting them in front of a screen is really not doing much for their brain. So that's really the big part. Like if you're going to watch, let your 3-year-old watch 10 minutes here and there with you of, a travel channel, an Animal Planet, like as much to me, slow pace, something realistic. There's a lot of, children's cartoons that are just very, very fast paced, somewhat violent at times and things. So really, really be mindful as to what you are putting them in front with you. Hope that helps, Ingrid.
Essen, did you want to ask your question? Oh, ask to unmute.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I would like to ask my question. So, we have a 6-year-old, and she has not been introduced to screens at home yet. We don't have TV, and our fans think we're crazy. And so I'm going strong still because I don't think she needs it. She's the kind of kid that is quite involved with our home activities. She draws, she creates, we're not missing it in our life. But I feel the social pressure because we've avoided play dates or going to certain parties where there were movie screenings. I didn't tell her this, but I went to parties late, or I wouldn't do a play date or a sleepover at a house that I know they watch movies. I feel like now we're at a point where we're a bit forced to introduce her, or we should, so that we are involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's seen screens at school. There's a lot more screen time, Simone. It's your school now, I'm sad to say. Mm. Anyway, my question is, how do we start? How do I get in there and slowly get her introduced to it, but still keeping my values about it, which is she doesn't need it.
Right.
But I feel like I need to introduce her myself. It's like showing your child, I don't know, my father allowed me to try alcohol, right, at home.
Right.
Something like that. So, and we have a projector and that we watch after she goes to sleep, watch a movie or something ourselves. So that's my question. How do I introduce around between 6 and 7? What kind of programs do you recommend, and how much during the day? Something like that is my question.
So personally for me, I wouldn't let the pressure, get to you that you have to bring it in. The way I would kind of go about it is more like this initiation, right? And that maybe it's a date and you go to the movies, like you go experience a big screen, that's a whole other experience, right? And it can be magical because the sound is loud and all this, so that there is this sense of this is special. Right. So that we keep it as not this mundane thing where we can just, turn it on, whatever, but it's a special occasion. And then be okay with her going on play dates where there will be movies, because she will know what to expect. But that doesn't mean that you have to bring it into your home, right? I was that mother because my son really, really wanted, video games. And I refused categorically to spend my money on any of that. So I never bought the latest, greatest. And, every year there's something new, some new game. But I knew, well, that when he went to his friend's house, he was playing with those video games. But I still chose never to let them enter into my home. And, and that is fine. Then they know. And, one time he asked me, like, it's so unfair, all my friends have these games. And I said, yes, but, maybe your friends haven't gone to the pyramids in Mexico and in Egypt and traveled the world. So that's, your parents are choosing to, parent differently than your friend's parents. And that's it. And I love you. Right. It's so it's really being okay with the choices that you make. And then, if you do want to watch something like on your projector, make it something that you're all interested in, right? To me, it doesn't have to be these, sometimes I feel, goofy shows that they make for children that just dumb children down. So it can totally be about, a travel show, or, an animal show, or something that is about the real world, about, exploration, that she's going to learn something. And again, here you can do it in bits, right? You don't have to watch the whole hour. You can do 15 minutes and then pick it up the next day, like a chapter book. So really it's about you navigating what's comfortable with you, but as long as it's also interactive with your daughter.
Yeah, definitely. We let our kids go to other people's homes and they saw things that weren't allowed in our house. But then we also have to remember that we're really still, particularly between 6 and 12, they're mostly at our houses. And you can always invite that child, if they want to see each other a lot, to come and be at your place more, so that you're more in control of what they're up to, and they can organize baking together and that kind of thing. But yeah, I find it quite depressing that a lot of kids go over to each other's house and they sit behind the screens next to each other. So yeah, have play dates at your house as well. That's my other suggestion. There's some great comments coming in the chat as well. Let me just quickly come back to these. There was someone suggesting the Nat Geo has animal and science encyclopedia, which contains short yet informative bites of information with pictures that are affordable and contain such a nice variety of the subjects above. And Jess gets them in Brazil, but in English as well via Amazon. Maybe in other countries it's also possible. And then Amanda suggested it might also help connecting with your child and getting into their world by finding out what they like on a screen, and then it will be easier to set limits as they feel like they're understood.
But definitely have a time limit, right? For any of young children who already are on screens, or who are wanting to like really limit to, I would say 10, 15 maximum, 20 utmost maximum, because, and there to be really conscientious, to let them know, like, sure, you can play and we'll put a timer for 20 minutes. And when it's done, we put it away, and have something already to look forward to that we're doing afterwards. And be aware, like, to ask them sometimes if we go over the time, like, how is your body feeling? Because I remember very well with my son, when he did start, looking, playing on the computer and things, we had a time limit, and for some reason I was doing something. I kind of, he probably heard it, but ignored it and such. And afterwards he said, my body feels icky. I think I was on the computer for too long. So I think that to me is really important, to bring that self-awareness to our children as well, because they get it if we help them be aware of the signals that our body is giving us as well.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat that also came in earlier, which is like, what can I do instead of screens so that I can get some housework done? And as we talked about before, getting them involved in our daily life is one way, so if you are doing some cleaning, they can also come and help, or they can start to play by themselves. And even one family said, how do I build that concentration, with the child, so that they can play more independently? And it's something that, like a 15-month-old is not necessarily going to be able to play even 15 minutes by themselves, but they can explore, they can, take things off the shelves. It might not be the same kind of concentrated play as when you're sitting next to them, but as long as they're keeping safe, and, you have set up your home so that hopefully you have quite a large yes space where they can explore and have, lots of things that they're interested in. Like a 15-month-old can take things out, put things back in, take things out, put things back in. They can begin to take out all the pieces of their puzzles. They can rearrange furniture. They love lifting heavy things. And they actually, a 15-month-old often like to be alongside us making the food as well. So they may not be able to, you know, do everything perfectly, but we can usually find a job that they can help us with. And then I love that Louise says that when she needs a 15-minute break at the end of the day, she watches with her daughter, kind of like what Jean-Marie said. And it's been proven that the negative impacts of screens drastically lowered when the screen is shared with the adult, when there's an adult present and the child isn't left alone in front of the TV with no human interaction. And what my daughter is exposed to is never cartoons, only real images of people doing something that she can learn something from. And so again, someone else, Jem's got an example. We watch Allison's Kitchen, which is cooking in nature. And Sarah says, I've got 4 children, ages 9, 7, 4, and 6 months. And we have no screen time during weekdays, and the screen time is limited to the weekends for a certain time, and my children respect this. So yeah, when you're clear, then your children can also be clear. But when you're unpredictable, then that's when they know you can push the buttons, and it changes every day depending on how we're feeling.
Right. So we have 2 raised hands. I have Jess and Jem. Who would like to? Jess and Jem. I see Jem. I don't see Jess. Oh, there's Jess. Okay, ask to unmute. There.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm here from Brazil, and as I already told in the chat, I have a baby who is 6 months, and he is a pandemic baby, and our parents, my husband parents and mine, they live far away from us, and we already exposed the child to screens because of video chats. And here in Brazil, we had a specialist who wrote a book called Screens with Caution. And it's really interesting because it's not a book saying what you're not supposed to do, but it's a book that gives you a moment to reflect about your actions and how you're going to interact with screens. So it gives lots of activities you can do instead of going on TV. And TV is really cultural here in Brazil. We have more than one at home. And when I look back, I remember me breastfeeding, looking at soap operas and TV shows. So it's really common, but I would like to know if this exposure to video chats, nowadays I teach online English, and I have some kids, they are 4-year-old, they are 5-year-old, and I'm really, as a teacher, I'm I'm a little bit worried, but I have to work. So how we deal with this new situation we are facing?
So from what I hear, the new situation being this video chat with your 6-month-old and relatives, right? So that to me is acceptable in a sense, because this is our modern day way of communicating, and there is an interaction. And I'm I'd be interested to know like how long they actually stay really, engaged and focused during that call. But to me, it's more for the benefit of the adults that are on the other side of the screen who just, want to love on this baby and see the baby. So again, we don't necessarily have to put our child right up in front. But be okay with the fact that, we can show the adult what's going on and such, but maybe to also let the adults on the other side just kind of lower their expectations. Like we cannot, expect a 6-month-old to be engaged. So to be okay with just having a window into their life and you're able to see them, so that I don't want it to be, just like we go to, relatives, like we tell our children, you have to say hello and, give the hug and all of this, which, we've had this conversation before on the show that we don't want to impose that. And I think it's the same thing with that whole video chat. And then you brought up a really good point, Jess, is, this whole pandemic like totally like messed us up with the screens because, you know, so many schools went online. I mean, we all went online. I was totally discombobulated. I could no longer do all my in-person meetups with new moms and everything. It was all online. So I think, you know, that has kind of thrown a wrench in the whole system. And now we just need to, okay, let's go back to, you know, to a more less screen and so forth. But it is, you know, it is unfortunately what it is with this whole pandemic that we just went through, which I do hope we're almost over with. So yes.
I think also giving the grandparents like a tip, like, oh, if you buy actually a book that they're interested in, then they can read the book and, you know, you can interact that way. There's someone in the chat that said like it's 5 to 10 minutes concentration before they wander around to other things. So it is really small. But then like even I have nephews and nieces who live in Australia, and you know, I remember the reverse situation when my sister was talking to my kids on FaceTime and things, and she'd just say, so how was your week? And they're talking to them like they're grown-ups. And you really have to like, what I found actually the most successful was when I just put my sister at the dining table and she was like one of the member of the family, and when I for breakfast, we'll talk about what we're eating and like, what did you have for breakfast? And that kind of stuff worked better, just to actually talk about your daily life, as opposed like, so maybe send them some questions that are like more helpful so that the conversation will be more productive.
And I also like the idea of reading. I interviewed somebody the other day, and her parents, so the grandparents of the children, have a weekly date with the children where they're reading, you know, a chapter book together. So they're a little bit older, but it's just, you know, it satisfies that connection for the grandparents who live far away, and it gives, you know, the children time to connect. So they're basically not necessarily on the screen, but they're listening and they're able to interact with their grandparents. So yeah. Jim, do you want to unmute yourself?
Oh,
Yeah.
Hi there. Hi, thank you. I jumped on late, so I may have missed this at the beginning, but I have a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old. 6-year-old's turning 7 next week, and they're at a Montessori school here in Mallorca. And we have screen in that we watch a film maybe on a Friday evening as a family, and that's it really. And during the lockdowns we did Cosmic Kids yoga on the screen, but my 7-year-old nearly 7-year-old has been very upset asking for an iPad because her friends have iPads. And I think they do like stop motion films and they do Montessori apps. But for me, I'm not ready for her to have that. And I know we've sort of covered this already with games and things, but yeah, I don't know how to, at what point. She says, well, when am I going to be able to have one? And I don't know how to make that decision, and what's fair and respectful to her for what she's going through with her friends, because I know they talk about it a lot at school.
Right. So here again, and Simone, please jump in too. But again, here for me, it's like anything in our family values. If you don't feel it, then do not, you know, let yourself be pressured by the 7-year-old's friends, right? It's kind of, I don't know if you heard me sharing about my son and video games. It's like, those are my values. And then, you know, it is about really having a conversation with you. Like, when will you be ready? You know, when you, the parent, when are you going to be ready to kind of ease into giving, you know, maybe some time, some limited time, and such. And maybe, you know, maybe you need to explore what these stop motion apps are, and you know, the Montessori apps, see what, you know, is it at all beneficial? And I would have a word of caution too about an app that calls itself Montessori. So that's a whole other conversation for another day, but it's like, what are you talking about? So
it's today. Today's the day about Montessori and Screens. And I think Jean-Marie and I would say that if it's an app, for example, doing sandpaper letters, you'd be better off making sandpaper letters and doing this.
Right.
So
right. No, but I'm saying I'm being facetious when to me, the word Montessori makes it legit when no, it's still an app. It's still a screen. And, before 6, they're sensorial learners. So give them the material in their hands. Their fingers need to be moving. And that's another thing, that we didn't talk about, but this whole notion of screens, it's not only the visual and the brain, but it's also the fine motor. There are children today who are not able to pick up blocks with their fingers because all they're doing is swiping. And that is, to me, detrimental. So we have to be, thinking about the whole child, the whole body, and such. So Jem, to go back to you, it's really about, what you're willing to give in. Maybe we don't even need an iPad. Maybe, we can look at these things on your laptop for a little bit, and you're there and you're interested in all this. And maybe you'll see that, oh, wow, she is learning something, and maybe an iPad for the holidays or something, or next birthday or something might be down the road. Like set a time for her, on which birthday will be able to have the iPad. For me, it was pierced ears. I had to wait a certain age to be able to pierce my ears. It was my mom's rules, so we just put up with it. You want to add something to that, Simone?
There is a book by Sue Palmer, and it's old, I'll admit it, but it's called Toxic Childhood and What We Can Do About It. And what I liked, it was when there were only screens and there wasn't mobile phones and things like this even. But the same principles apply, is that, if you're a screen-free household and you get to the age where other children are talking about things and you don't know about them, like Minecraft, for example. I think Minecraft is pretty, when you don't play the zombie version, but more of the creative version, I think it's called. Then you can actually, then if you said, okay, well, these are the things that are going to be okay for you to use, and you can do them on the laptop. Like, I don't know if they need the iPad and those kind of things. I did let my children do stop motion films as they got older, and they enjoyed it, but for limited amounts of time. And so they were always being active participants and that kind of thing. So Sue Palmer kind of said that if you, rather than having completely screen-free households, you could allow them, set aside how long it's going to be, what is okay for them to do, and then they have a little idea of what's going on in their social community, because otherwise they might become that outsider kid who doesn't really know what's going on. So that's how we managed it, is they could have a little bit of Minecraft and that kind of thing.
And just another, and this is from personal experience. So when we moved to this country, my daughter was 2 and we did not have a television, and my daughter went off to preschool with other American children that were all watching television, and they all had these shows that they were talking about. She completely got into it. Like it was her fantasy world. She never saw the show, but she knew all about the different characters and would pretend. So I'm just saying, I just say that we're not doing them harm by not including them to the, to these TV shows that the other children are watching. And on a personal level, myself, oftentimes conversation among adults today are about TV shows that they watched in their childhood. And I'm kind of clueless because I was between 2 countries and I don't know what they're talking about, but it's okay. So, be okay with that too.
Thank you.
Do you want to take a question from our sheet, or there's 3 raised hands?
We can take one from the sheet. I just wanted to highlight Laura Flores Shaw.
Yes.
Amanda has a very interesting Montessori white paper on digital technologies and development you can buy on Amazon. So I think that's probably a really good resource for our Montessori community, because Laura Flores Shaw is she does a lot of research So then you get a scientific perspective on the conversation that we're having today, because we're talking about it from a parenting side, but I'm sure there's some folks that really want the science side as well. Yeah, let's go to the sheet. Let's have a look. What about kids that are hooked on TV and screen at age 2 already?
Intervention, people. You gotta stop it in, you know, I mean, and honestly, there might not be the gentlest way, but look at how much time they are right now and try to reduce it every day a bit, right? Until there is nothing. Start planning some outings, spend time outside so that we're not dependable on this screen. Oftentimes screen habits come with a certain routine, right? There is, we might turn on the television in the morning while we're getting ready, having breakfast, or, you know, maybe when they come home from school, or in the afternoon when we need a break. So it's about us observing, again, the environment, where we're, you know, setting our child up for this screen time and trying to reduce it as much as possible so that we're eliminating it completely, especially for a 2-year-old.
Yeah, someone did say, is 2 years old the golden age for introducing it? And I would say that Montessori, we would do it, a lot later, closer to the younger elementary child.
Yeah, I would honestly, for me, I wouldn't say, you know, don't even consider it till 8, 9, 10. Like, just, you have plenty of time, right? And there's actually a question on the sheet that I want to talk about. How to respond to people who say, how will your child learn about technology if you don't allow screen time? Well, it's fascinating because today's children, it's in their DNA. They pick up a, you know, contraption and they know how to use it. So for one, I wouldn't worry. And over time, our digital landscape is transforming all the time. We have new things all the time. So I wouldn't be concerned. And I think the way to answer to is when their time comes, they will figure it out. That's it. Like, don't let the pressure of, oh, but we live in a, age of technology. We need to know technology. When we need it, we will figure it out. So not to worry.
I mean, if a 2-year-old can learn how to swipe and open a phone just from watching, it's very intuitive technology these days. Just like when you get a new app, and kids aren't scared to like try all the functions and the buttons, so they pick it up super quickly. I did allow my children like 30 minutes of screen time when they were above 6 years old, and they did that right up until they were 12. They had 30 minutes, and they would always choose something active to do. And they still learn how to code, how to set up a website. In 2 hours, they like set up their own WordPress website because they just will try all the menus, and like, it's amazing to watch them do these things. So, and yeah, hilariously, my son is studying IT university as well.
Right.
So even with the limited amount of access to screens, and at school, they learn how to do a presentation. They're quite tech savvy. And I mean, I actually like tech, so that's like, we're modeling it, but I'm also showing them how I use it in moderation, and that I set limits for myself, and that I have a book and I read real books. And I think that there was a question that came in about what's the difference between a screen and a book. And the difference is when you're reading a book, and you can only create in your imagination something that you're able to imagine, right? So it's not as scary as if you were sat in front of the Harry Potter film, for example. Once your child's 7 or 8 and they want Harry Potter, make them read the whole series before they see the film, because it's much scarier when someone presents to you what Voldemort looks like than what you imagine Voldemort to look like. So that kind of thing. And you can also much earlier, choose things that are based in reality for the child under 6. They're not ready for this fantastical world. So even though a 5-year-old might get interested in Harry Potter, they're really not ready for the content of Harry Potter until they can understand what the difference is between reality and fantasy. Because even I have a child who's 7 years old, and they still grappling with the literal translation of things. There's a slogan, those of you in Amsterdam, there's a store Sla that is a salad bar, and it says, taste the magic of veggies. And they said, but you can't taste magic. You know, and so this is a 7-year-old who's still grappling with like, what is real, what isn't real.
Right, right.
So imagine then how scary some things can be that they see on screens.
And the other thing too about the difference between a book and a screen too is that a screen actually is a bazillion little lights flashing into our brain that puts kind of that prehistoric brain that we have into lock mode, right? It's not, we're not reading, we're not looking at words, we're stuck there because it's a way that technology has created for us to be mesmerized, to be just, you know, in a trance. And you see it in children who are looking at screens. They're in total trance, and parents think, oh, my child is focused. No, they're not. They're in a trance. Their prehistoric brain is in lock mode, and there's not much else going on. So that to me is a really big difference too between, you know, having a book that you can feel, that you can touch, that you're actually deciphering the letters and so forth, or pictures if it's a younger child. So big difference for how the brain functions.
And quite interesting, Erica asks, what about a physical book versus a Kindle or a book on a device?
So there again, I think it's the way that the imagery is, you know, the light is hitting your eyes. I mean, personally, I've tried like to read books on the iPad. I don't know. I don't like it. I really need my book to be able to read. So I don't know the research behind that, but I would think it would be somewhat similar, is more of how it's interacting with the brain mechanism.
Erica, I think you might want to look at Kindle, because the technology, they have like paper technology, so that it's trying to look more like print than a screen. So there might be some kind of Kindles that are more suitable for children. But again, yeah, this isn't our specialty. Akshata also put a book in the chat that people might want to check out called Reset Your Child's Brain, by Dr. Victoria L Dunckley. And it's great to understand the effects of screen time on the development of the child. So yes, Akshata also says, even the lights on the screen has proven to stimulate the brain and cause sleep problems and can lead to destructive behaviors. It's also not recommended for us adults to be exposed to blue lights from screens at least 2 hours before sleep. Yes. Again,
so there are 3 hands up in our group. Carmen, are you here? Can I ask you to unmute?
Yes. Hello.
Oh, Carmen. Hello. How are you?
Good, and you? Yes, I have 2 questions. One is, my kids love to take the phone and take pictures with my phone.
Okay.
What about that? And then the other question is, when the grandparents send them videos about, for example, because my kids like things, and the grandparents send videos to them with the real and this kind of things in reality, and they talk about this information. They just don't send a video empty of voice. They send a video with their voices recorded, and they send about whatever, like in this case could be like the sea, they can be the boats, there can be bells ringing, and this is all about sending videos for them to have like some kind of contact when they cannot talk to the grandparents for the time frame different.
So here for me, again, this is very different in the sense that this is an interaction with a relative. It's not handing over your phone, like, you know, in a restaurant, keep quiet, here, watch my phone. It's very different, right? It's about an interaction, something that is interested to them. I would maybe, limit that we're not, having 5 videos a day or whatever. So that's, you know, that's for you to manage with your parents. And then the idea of taking pictures, that's great, but it's also like, why not get them a little camera that they can take pictures with if you know, photography is something of interest? Because again, our phone has become, you know, these amazing cameras, but it still is a phone. Like the idea of, you know, if photography is something of interest, like you could even do, you know, a pinhole camera, which is the rudimentary camera to understand, you know, what it is to take photos, and then really just have, there's beautiful little digital cameras for children, and you know, what do you want to do with these photos? Like, are you telling a story? Things like that. So again, make it interactive.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jean-Marie, I'm conscious of the time. We normally would stop at the hour, but I have a little bit more time and happy to stay on for another half an hour if folks want to. And we also will send the recording. Jean-Marie, are you okay to stay on for a bit longer?
Yes.
And those folks who have to go, thank you for coming. And we will send you the recording in the next 24 hours or so. Yes.
With all the links and the books that Simone mentioned as well. There are some more, there's 2 more raised hands here. Emma and Marta, if you are still on the call, if you'd like to unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, thank you. This is a lot of great discussions. So one of my question is not necessarily the screen, but related to technology or the ebook, like for audio programs, how is that a good, is that a thing similar to the screen that we should avoid? Or this is something like more similar to a book or things that we can slowly introduce to the young child? The reason I'm asking is we do a really good job limiting the screen time. But now my 3.5-year-old, I noticed she started picking up like some of the sounds or things that we listen at the background. And I do read like physical book, but also sometimes I put on the e-read, like ebook, for me to when I'm doing something like cleaning the house, etc. And she started to picking up things and show the interest that she wants to know, oh, what is this song? Who is singing it, etc. So that made me wondering, is it the time to start it to introduce some selected audio program or stories to this young group, young age? And if so, is that, what's the consequence or the impact that I should be aware of down the road? Is that going to be similar to the screen time that we should really wait for a little bit longer? Yeah.
Great question. And I hadn't really thought of the whole audio aspect of it, but here, you know, for a 3.5-year-old, I would say, you know, audiobooks are wonderful and it would be even a plus if you actually have the physical book with it, so we can turn the pages and we can see the images as we are listening. But again, you know, I would, you know, personally, I would limit it a little bit to that it's, you know, doesn't go on for hours and hours, because that could probably be, you know, a great form of escape as well. So I don't know the research. So great question. Simone, do you have?
I like audiobooks too, because and there was even ones when my kids were small where it beeped and then you turn the page so the children could actually follow along at the right time. So I'm sure they still have similar things, but maybe a bit more advanced these days. I'm not up with exactly all of those technologies. But yeah, like Jean-Marie says, like, I'm not talking about for hours and hours, but for that child, for example, who needs a 15-minute break at the end of the day and they don't want to maybe help you in the kitchen and they're melting down a little bit, let's put on an audiobook and you can read your favorite thing for 15 minutes. That could kind of be something that's really good. And then even I've heard with older children, for example, who might have trouble settling down at the end of the night, they can have an audiobook and listen to the same audiobook every night, and it's boring enough that they'll fall asleep, because you know, sometimes an audiobook is so exciting that you want to keep reading it, but like the same audiobook can actually help some children fall asleep. But yeah, I'm not sure again the research, but I do see it as different because it's not that screen, it's not as addictive. but it's also not a replacement for doing story time with your child, which
Right. To interacting, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's quickly do one from that came in before the call, and then we'll come to Martin and Ennis. Okay. Is the screen valid if my child asks for a video when something that interests him is shown or explained? For example, how a machine works, how toys are made. Aren't they losing valuable content just by avoiding the screens?
They're not avoiding valuable content. I mean, we could also go to the library and get a book on how that thing works and all that, right? We had all of this information before screens entered our life. So I think it's important to also seek out, right? I would much rather find out where there's a big construction site in my neighborhood and take a walk and go observe actual people working in the machines, and maybe stopping somebody and asking them, or going to the fire station and talking to the fire people there, or whatever. So again, yes, a screen can be great to, learn how to do something, but it's also looking at books or asking people or trying to figure things out on our own, or taking a machine apart, on our own, as opposed to kind of having this screen be the only way to get that information, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a whole problem that we have in our society in a way about that more is better. Like, more isn't better, because there's only so much we were meant to take in as humans, like we used to live in villages of 100 people, and we have to be really careful about how we even stretch ourselves to online communities and everything else, and managing that. But also all the content that we get, our brains can only function like so well with too much input, and sometimes just reading a book rather than having short articles that we're reading, our attention is changing. And so, yeah, I think how we deliver that content is really important, as Jean-Marie says, in so many other different ways. Erica says you miss out on the present being on technology. Yeah. Okay, Marta, would you like to unmute yourself?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I must apologize for my background noises. I've got a baby and a toddler, so it can be a bit hectic here.
Welcome to the club.
I've actually submitted a question through the Google Sheet, but because I wasn't sure whether I'll be able to attend, but so please ignore it. I thought it might be actually better to speak in person, since I'm actually was able to make it. So it's about my toddler, really. So she's nearly 2 years old, and we've been really strict with the screen time for her. And that's sort of a little side question. I've only really allowed her mostly in the car, where we've been making like a late night journey. Well, not late night journeys, but it gets dark here in winter time quite quickly. So it's a great tool, really, to entertain a child just before you get home, so they don't fall asleep before the actual bedtime. So there's not much problem getting them to bed. We do this sing-song sort of situation, all this, but it's not really, it's only lasting as long, and when the less than 2-year-old, the attention isn't that great. So popping on the screen every now and then, it's sort of a great tool. But I'm more concerned about the fact that quite recently she's actually we've dropped the nappy, so she's been using the potty, and it's been going really, really great. She's learned to do it very quickly. We've barely had any accidents whatsoever. She even wakes up at night and tells me that she needs to go, so she's really aware. However, putting in the nice words, calling bowel movements is a big deal. She gets really stressed out. She gets really, really worried. Tried everything, singing songs with her, reading books, but she just cries and has a really hard time. And popping on a screen seems to be the only thing that really relaxes her and allows her to kind of sit on a potty long enough to actually do it. Otherwise, if I don't do that, she just runs backwards and forwards, gets really stressed out. She can hold it for a few days as well, so it's a bit difficult. And it's generally just a lot of stress for us all. However, if I use the screen and she sits on a potty, it could be for a very long time, sometimes half an hour, sometimes even longer. But, I only allow her to watch videos of herself mostly. And she loves that. She loves watching herself. But, it goes from 1 minute to another, and there's not really a set limit. The limit is, when she actually goes, but that sometimes doesn't happen. So I try to kind of go, for 10 minutes and then a break, 10 minutes and then a break, but it still mounts up throughout the day, especially if she holds it and she's stressed out. So is there like a solution to it? I'll be really grateful for some help, because, it's not really what I would like to do. I try playing, I try reading books, but her attention just isn't there. So she doesn't like that. So I feel a bit stuck.
Can I ask you a question, Marta? You'd written as well that at school she does go to the toilet.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so she goes to nursery in the mornings, and she's actually been great there as well. And it was literally last week that she started doing poo there as well, and they said there's no problem. She just goes and she just barely even notices, and she's absolutely happy to do it. However, in the meantime, when she comes back home, it comes to the same, like over the weekend and stuff. It's just a big problem. So
you're having such trouble, and my heart goes out to you. But
thanks.
showing you as well that it is possible, like to do it without the screen. So it can also be that she is getting a little addicted to it, and like for an hour with the screen and things is getting to be a problem. So you talk to her and say, I thought it was a good idea, and it's definitely helping you relax, and it's great that you can now do it at school, and I'm here and I'll relax you. And just if you can be the calm, and you've got the regulated system, that it shouldn't be stressful for you if she doesn't go to the toilet. Like when we did our Montessori training, I remember Judy O'Ryan saying, the poo will come, it might take 29 days to come, and that's okay. Like let them also relax about it, and you be relaxed about when it comes to it, and so it's not causing stress. You can rub their back, you can sing songs, or whatever, those kind of things. But if she doesn't want to sit on the toilet for longer, then say, I trust that your body will do it when it's ready, and let it drop, and just don't talk about the poop. That's what I would start to do, because and I think it's great that she is now doing it, particularly in the last week. So something's on the right track. This is the moment to seize, like, let's get rid of that potty.
Yeah. No, and I agree with Simone. It sounds like the phone or the screen is becoming a crutch for her at home, especially if she's fine at school, right? So that it's possible. So you might want to just remind her of that it's, we know that you can do this, and maybe even have a little bit of, that 2-minute little video once we're done. So when we've gone potty and we're good, we can watch it together, right? So that it doesn't become this thing where, and there's many people that go to the bathroom with a phone and stay on the toilet for a long time because they're just scrolling on their phone. So let's be conscientious of that. So good.
The only question I have, because I've had some sister input, they've also had children, and they've been scaring me that if she holds it for too long, it then becomes very hard for her to push it out. Sorry to be so descriptive. And then it can be actually, problematic, because she's then going to be struggling to actually do it, and it's going to be painful. So she's going to associate it with pain. So, being told all those horror stories as well, I've been really worried. And I just, it would be great to have some reassurance if you had like a situation when, to be fair, so far she's been actually quite good. It's always happened relatively quickly. It was a day or two that she would hold it and not longer. But, I've just been scared that would I cause her more pain if I let her hold it for longer?
Right. There, it's more of medical things, and that's not my forte, but I would just make sure that she has a high fiber diet, some prune juice every once in a while and all of that, so that we are making sure that, she is eliminating and having bowel movements. And I think it's also important, like when they do go poop or pee or whatever, is to remind them like how good our body feels, right? It feels relieved. Our body told us that we needed to let go of this and we listen, and it feels so good when we let it go. So like, be really positive and don't let the horror stories that your sisters are telling you kind of get in the way of helping her be calm and all of that. And you've got to remember that toileting, and we actually have a whole show on toileting, but it's a power struggle. Like they have figured out that they hold something over you, that you cannot force a child to go to the bathroom. So they understand that because they're very smart. So let go, let her have that control, and let go of the anxiety that has been created.
And perhaps maybe you have some tricks for the car journeys as well. It's literally like, I've really tried to eliminate it, but I can't say it is great, when you've got like 10 minutes to get home and they screaming and crying because they're bored, and they're less than 2-year-olds. So
books and toys and different things that they can manipulate, and then looking out the window. There's plenty of things that we drive by, and there's lights and there's trees and there's different colors, and oh, I spot something red. Do you see it? What kind of cars? I remember my son wanted to know what all the different signs were of, whether you could turn left or you U-turn or all that. Like make, be the entertainer as you're driving, right?
It works great during the day. It's just the nighttime, when it's like pitch black outside, and it literally there's like you can't really see much. So
then maybe you're telling stories, or you're singing songs, or you're listening to a story. Like listen to music, listen to a storybook, have other things, but the screen is not necessary in a car or anywhere. So
don't worry, we didn't have them when we went on long trips with kids.
Exactly. I mean, I remember playing games about the lights and who was there and different things. So
every trip was perfect and calm, but we survived.
That's true. I guess we're just too lazy now with the screens.
Martha, I would maybe take yourself to the doctor to get the reassurance you need, so you can feel relaxed, because you need to start to, you can give her the signal that you trust her body and that she trusts her body. Just the same as with food, like we're trying to teach them to know when they're full, and we're trying to hand back over the reins to your child to say, when you need to use the toilet, and it takes as long as it takes, kind of thing. Yeah.
No, thank you. I mean, she's been really great actually, and occasionally she didn't make it, and she knows she's struggling, so she'll go and get her clean trousers and clean pants as well, and to put on and stuff. So it's but thank you. That's really reassuring, and I appreciate that.
All righty, good luck.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Enna to unmute. Did I say your name right? Inas. Okay, hello.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Thanks. I think you touched upon it in your last answer, actually, but I was going to ask about long flights, so long hauls. So basically, I come stocked with every possible, few books, few manipulative, whatever I can get through. But on a 9-hour flight, towards the end, when we ran out of all the possible activities, I sometimes put planet Earth, and then we start talking about the animals. I'm slightly feeling guilty about it with a toddler, like less than 2 years, but he loves animals, and I'm like, okay, a few minutes is probably gonna be fine, but yeah.
Yeah, no guilt to have, please. Like a long haul is a long haul. Like I watch a lot of movies when I'm on a long haul. But for one, it's moving, getting up, walking around, going and talking to other people, going and seeing what's at the back of the plane and all that. Like I like to, when I'm traveled with young children, is to get up and move around a lot. So that we can talk about the different parts of the planes, of who does what, all of that, and have manipulative toys. Actually, there was someone on the call earlier that just did a little reel on Instagram about all the things that she took on a long haul. And to me, that's, and at the end, if you watch a little bit of Planet, it's okay. Like, it's not, this is a very particular environment, a very particular situation. It's not, you're not doing it every day in your home. You're not putting your child in front of the television for them to eat. You're just in an airplane where you have nowhere else to go, and you need a little break too. So for me personally, that's okay. Simone?
Yeah, I will not officially say it, but I'm a Montessori teacher who has unlimited screen time on an airplane because my family lives in Australia. And so it was a one-off thing. I do that once every 2 years.
Yep. You catch up on all the movies, all the latest movies.
And also there were times when my kids didn't we didn't have portable screens and things like that, and we had some terrible flights. So yeah, and
to me, it's just about not investing your money into, buying these iPads that toddlers can hold with their two hands. Like the baby industry has made it that, these are now indispensable and that we have to have them. And that's total BS. So don't let that, fool you. It's not because they look fun and perfect for children that they are. So
I'm just dropping a link in the chat to Common Sense Media.
Oh, yes.
Are going to show children programs or that kind of thing. Common Sense Media, you probably already know it, but it gives you a preview of what kind of things your child will be exposed to. Ideally, if you're going to show them something, watch it in advance yourself so you can look out for things. You can pause bits that you think will freak out your child. You'll know in advance. Watch with your child, so if they see something that they're not expecting, you can process it with them, because they take things very literally, like we talked about. And so in the question, Susie asked in the chat, since Montessori philosophy emphasizes realism for visual images, books, videos for ages up to 6, is reading fiction, folk tales, fairy tales to be avoided? And yes, we do fairy tales and folk tales after 6 years old. But to say that when you're choosing programs, you can also look for those realistic pictures. We talked about slower images. It's really hard to find good shows to recommend. Like, a lot of people ask, can you recommend good shows and apps and educational programs? And honestly, they all seem to be animals doing things instead of real people. So if you do have any that you really like, feel free to pop them in the chat and we can share them with the recording. But yeah, see what fits your family values as Montessori families about their interests and things like that as well.
So Akshata, actually, this is who I was referring to earlier that did a reel on all the things she brought. She said, I tried giving some screen time on our long flight to India and she refused. Luckily, I had enough things to entertain her. So you see, young children, don't always want the screen either. So smart daughter you have there.
Okay.
Wonderful.
We'll maybe fit in 2 more questions and then we're going to wrap this up.
Yes, this has been delightful. A lot of people have stayed on.
This has just been the beginning of this conversation. I think this is the first seminar I've, I think Montessori Europe also did a seminar on screens. So yeah, but there's not much in the way of resources. So I hope this has been a helpful start for you all. You'll all have your own approaches. So this is just one bit of information that you might be able to put into your tool bag. And we hope that a Montessori perspective has been helpful. But let's find.
And also, if I can add to that, is for you to be aware of what your digital wellness is. Like, what are, be observant of what screens do to you and how long you're staying and what you're modeling and so on, because it does start with us.
There was one question that came up in the chat and also that came in earlier. What about
Erica has her hand up too. Sorry.
Okay, we'll do Erica last then. We'll do this one and then Erica last.
Okay.
When a child's tired or sick and people use screens, what are other options to using screens, like watching TV and things when our child's sick and we're trying to get them still, and then how to deal with taking that away if we have used screens, because there's often like that detox effect after. So have you got any thoughts, Jean-Marie, on using screens when the child's sick?
Well, yes. I mean, who doesn't want a, nerdy TV show when you're sick, right? You totally, you kind of want to. But again, let's use that as kind of a last resort, like that long flight. Maybe it's, some calming music. Maybe it is an audiobook that is just, we can turn the pages and be calm. And then if we do, we have ended up using the television or the screen, and now our child is well and they still want it. So that is, what I was saying earlier is we just eliminate, a little bit of time every day so that it's reduced to, eventually being maybe only on the weekend where we can be together and watching something together. Really, the idea is to try as much as possible to not be dependent on the screen for entertainment or, to get a child to be quiet. Like we would rather involve them in what we're doing. We'd rather help them, be able to do activities on their own than to just say, here, watch this, because we know, I mean, and this is, the beauty of the technology is they have studied our brain to know exactly what is going to keep us hooked on to that screen for as long as possible. So we are the adults and we need to be vigilant for our, developing brain that are, especially under 6, when they're in that absorbent mind, when it's just so fabulous, everything that's going on. Let's be vigilant to give them sensorial activities, manipulative things to do with us around the house.
While we answer Erica's last question, I put a link in the chat to menti.com, and there you can answer the question, what's going to help you with screens in your home going forward? And you can add 3 little questions, and then I'll share the word cloud with everyone at the end. So you can follow that link as we chat. And there's also, Akshatha, questions for you about what you brought on your flight to keep your little one entertained on your flight. Okay, Erica, over to you. Oh, asked to unmute.
Well, I need to ask unmute. Sorry.
There we go. Thank you for that. It's been an amazing hour and a half. So I had loads of questions, but the one that I'm finding most difficult is how, not necessarily now, but in the future, once my son is, as he's 2, once he's maybe getting into wanting to use the phone, is how do I and my husband live our lives and use our technology without being hypocrites, because I don't want him to have the technology. I see a huge value in not having the technology, but my husband works around 4 computers in our house, has his phone all the time, has his headphones all the time. And because I'm 24 hours, 7 days a week with my son, and when he naps we're in Italy, so everything's shut. So I can't even make my business calls or the calls I need to make during that time. I do them when he's awake. And so, I do try and say, I'm doing this, I'm ringing the plumber, or I'm, to try and show what I'm doing. But it's actually, I'm really struggling with how do I continue and not be a hypocrite, because I'm going to be firm and not let him use technology a lot, because I don't think he needs it for a long time.
Right. And I think you're very wise in that regard. To me, though, I don't know why you're saying being a hypocrite, because you're using a tool. I mean, it still stays a tool, right? This is our modern day phone. We don't have the phone on the wall with the long thing, right? This is our phone. So I think if we tell our children, oh, I need to text dad to make sure he brings some milk home, or I'm gonna sit down and look at the news real quick, or I need to call the plumber. You're letting them know what the tool is for and what you're doing. You're not modeling sitting there and just scrolling and not paying attention to them, right? You're just using the tool, and he might want to use it. And, I don't know if you have relatives where you do FaceTime or all that. So you don't. Okay. So, for him, he doesn't need that tool right now. Like, if he wants it, it's like, this is mommy's phone and I use it to call. And then the other thing for me is, and I forget who had mentioned this, but I thought was very wise, is to find a place where you keep your phone. So put it in a cupboard or in a drawer and not have it on you all the time, because I think that gives us this thing where we constantly need to be checking it, or, if there's a notification, we want to look at it, so that if it's in a cupboard, it rings, well, we go open the cupboard, we say hello, we answer it, and we put it back, just like the old time phones, right? Where it's not this constant thing that we have. And then the other thing, and this is my digital wellness, I do not have any notification whatsoever on my phone, so that it never interrupts me. Sure, I miss calls. Sure, there's people that would like to come over, and it's like, well, I was doing something else, like, and so I think that's what I was saying earlier, is like, tune in to what your digital wellness is too about that, and continue letting him know what you're using your phone for. And when he is napping, that's your time to maybe scroll away and take your use that technology if you want. And then daddy has 4 screens, because that's his work. Those are his tools. That's what he uses to work. And that's it. Simone, do you have something to add to that?
No, I think that you have covered most of it. Work, I think it's really a challenge having children and work. Like, we didn't used to take children to the office, and now we're expecting them to sit in our offices. So I think as much as possible, parents should go out to work, and then you arrange care around it. But that's not our reality always. And so I think describing that as Papa's tool is probably the best way you can approach that. And for him to respect that when he's not working, he takes off his headphones, to also model it as much as possible to get on the same page. Yeah.
Thank you.
There are some great ideas from Akshata in the chat about what they took on their long flight. And then we'll check over at Menti for you all to share your voting. So Akshata had books, sticky notes, painter's tape, reusable stickers, magnetic blocks, travel tangram, Blockaroo magnetic foam, sketch pens, crayons, plain papers to draw on, pipe cleaners and beads to make bracelets. You can also make different shapes with pipe cleaners. Melissa and Doug, water wow books are also a favorite for a travel time. So I will copy those and put them into our show notes so that you have that amazing list. Thank you, Ashata, for sharing.
I hope it's your daughter that carried all that, because that sounds like a whole suitcase just for.
And then Essen has said, I also bring a new book or a new toy for the trips, which keeps my child more engaged. It's exciting and new, and more time is spent exploring. And so I'm just going to copy this link one more time, because you have all been amazing. I can't believe that there were still 75 people on the call at the very end. But I'm just going to share my screen and show you what this link does for those of you who've never used Menti before. Share the screen, Google voting. Do you see my screen now? Okay. So it'll come up with this link if on your phone. What's going to help you with screens in your home going forward? So it might be like something like making agreements. It might be being clear. That's to the child and family. and family. Oh, wait, let me say family. And then my own use. And then you hit submit. And then you go over to here and you can see everything that everyone's been
Nice.
in.
Not
So-
buying a tablet. I like that one. Yes.
Being clear to the child, creating alternatives, follow through, watching together. Definitely. I think the watching together is really important, to sit side by side. Clear limits, discussion, conversation, again, limits, getting outside, patience, intentions, values, being in line with our values. Yeah. Self-awareness, having limited time, not buying the tablet, more boundaries. Oh, just moved, watching real stuff. My own use, so that was the one I put in, following through.
No, wonderful.
So fun. Thank you, everyone. Keep adding those in. Any last things, Jean-Marie, while everyone finishes?
No, just that I think it's wonderful that there were so many people on the call, because it is a hot topic, and I'm really pleased that parents are being vigilant and are concerned, because I think that we are seeing, as we evolve, that screens are not all beneficial, it's not all positive, so that we need to be really careful and really have those intentions and values. And I just want to encourage all of you that you get to decide how, you want to navigate this, and do not let, the friends and the neighbors and the iPad industry, bully you into thinking that you have to have it for your child to be, smart and happy or whatever. It's no. Play in the mud, play with some sticks and stones. That is really what they really want. So yes.
I love that. There's some other ones that came in that I spotted, which is like buy a camera. They're going to buy a camera instead. And they another was watching real stuff, hiding our phones and putting the phone in the cupboard. And thank you to everyone who is popping on their thank yous in the chat. I like how Alison says this was amazing to be in a community of like-minded people, which was reminded not to let the society pressure us and trust our instincts.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and we'll let you know when we're running our next Montessori show, and we'll see you all soon. Much love to you all. Check out Jean-Marie's podcast. I've been busy writing the Montessori Child, and we'll get it. Can we get the image of the Menti bubble? I will add that somehow to our show notes. Should we do that, Jean-Marie? We'll somehow send that image.
Okay, if you can do a screen capture on your end, that'd be great.
Do that.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh, what's the podcast called, Jean-Marie?
Wait.
The podcast is The Art of
Parenting is my podcast, The Art of Parenting, and I have a new episode that comes out every week. I either do solo shows on topics, or I interview experts that I feel parents might want to hear from. So if you have suggestions, but I think I need to get a screen person on the show very quickly too. All righty.
All right, everyone, take care. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.